Chio, no best. Tell Grant, me borrow me that in Bluetooth, that tabletop Bluetooth. Ma tell listening to this inaugural lecture. Grant, to borrow me that in tabletop Bluetooth. Ma tell listening to this lecture. See Peter, sabi. Philip and I go tell you, I give the lecture. The topic now feed my flock. Agriculture. So I won't listen to the lecture. This one a physical one. I'm going to do a session for that preparation. So I'm gonna get time. I'll listen to the lecture.
I will remain standing. Let us take the University Anthem.
University of citizens of the universe, from us and you, the pride of unicorns.
Seated. I have the honor and I have the privilege to respectfully invite the registrar of the university for the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
I welcome you all to the 174th inaugural lecture. It gives me great pleasure to invite Chancellor, Professor Owonari Abraham Georgewell, to come forward and give his remarks, opening remarks, and also to introduce the lecturer for today. Thank you. Vice Chancellor, sir.
Okay. Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Clifford Oforum, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Professor Kingsley Owete, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research and Development, Professor Iyopul Sinialaye, Acting Registrar, Mrs. Joyce Tamno, our revered inaugural lecturer for today, Professor Ibisime Etela, respected deans of faculties, you are present, professors who are on the other side, former registrar, former upper president, my revered chiefs who are in their regalia, giving color, adding color to this event, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me also recognize one of my personal person, the Honorable former member of House of Representatives, Honorable Nobody George. I welcome all of you. The professoral inaugural lecture you are about to listen to today is titled Feed My Flock. It's to be presented by an erudite scholar, Professor Etela, a professor of ruminant nutrition and production. It is therefore with a great light that I welcome you all to the Beat Me Banning Auditorium, venue of the 174th inaugural lecture series of the University of Port Harcourt. This inaugural lecture that takes its title from the Christian Holy Book, the Bible, specifically the Gospel according to St. John chapter 21, particularly at verse 15d, feed my lambs, promises to be very, very highly inspiring. Our erudite 174th inaugural lecturer is an animal scientist of repute. Animal science as a profession has been in practice throughout the ages. In fact, questions such as Abel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David, were they animal scientists? These are the questions that readily come to mind. Feed my flock. Is it a command or a directive to provide adequate food for human consumption? Or could it be a directive to feed livestock like cattle, sheep, and goats? I'm sure our inaugural lecturer will provide answers to these questions, agitating the minds of many of us, since the topic of the 174th inaugural lecture was made public. Often, we accuse livestock of being guilty of causing environmental degradation. And because they are voiceless, this appellation is regarded as true by many. But today, our erudite inaugural lecturer, 174th inaugural, an animal scientist, a scholar trained to listen and communicate with cattle, sheep, and goats, is assuming the position of a livestock advocate to come to the aid of these creatures and defend all the allegations from humans against the cattle, sheep, and goats. Cattle, sheep, and goats, do they have right to existence? Cattle, sheep, and goats, do they have right to protection? Cattle, sheep, and goats, do they have right to food? Cattle, sheep, and goats, are they also at risk from environmental pollution hazards? These and many more questions, I believe, will be succinctly answered by our 174th inaugural lecturer. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I urge all of us to just kindly sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and be ready for takeoff. And let this erudite scholar, Professor Etela, the 174th inaugural lecturer of the University of Port Harcourt, take us on this flight, which I have called Feed My Flock 001. Thank you very much.
May I call upon the DVC academic, Professor Kingsley Owete, to read the citation of our inaugural lecturer today, who is Professor Etela, Faculty of Agriculture. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor Owunari Abraham Georgewill, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Admin, Professor Clifford Oforum, Deputy Vice Chancellor, R&D, Professor Similarly, I was thinking of the first name, sir. Apologies. Iopu. Okay, I got it right there. Other principal officers present. Professors. Our Royal Highness and Majesty, all seated. Colleagues. And all protocols observed. Professor Ibisume Etela was born on the 23rd October 1970 to late Chief Josephus Etela Jackson and late Madam Makinieba Georgeway, both of Ifoko Town in the Asari Toro local government area of Rivers State. He commenced his nursery education at Auntie Ayos Preparatory School, Lagos. Primary education at St. James Primary School, Ifoko, 1978 to 1981. And secondary education at the Government C School, Isaka in Okrika local government area, Rivers State. Etela holds a doctorate degree in animal science from the University of Benin, Nigeria, as well as a master's and bachelor's degrees from the Rivers State University of Science and Technology, now Rivers State University. Professor Etela, a registered animal scientist and a founding member of the Regional Center of Expertise Port Harcourt, which was acknowledged by the United Nations University Institute for Advanced Study of Sustainability, Tokyo, Japan in June 2015. He was research advisor to the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, from January to December 2015. He joined the University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria as Lecturer 1, that is in 2005, became Senior Lecturer 2008, Associate Professor 2012, and Full Chair 2016. He was a Community Liaison Officer with the SPDC 2005, Research Fellow with the International Livestock Research Institute, Ibadan, 1998 to 2000, and Graduate Research Assistant with the same institute, 1996 to 1997. Professor Etela teaches both undergraduate and postgraduate level courses, including modules on research methods and proposal report writing. He is Dean, Faculty of Agriculture, Uniport, 2020 till date. Member, 5th Governing Council of NIS as Representative Dean, SS 2020 till date. Elected PRO, Association of Deans of Agriculture in Nigerian Universities, 2021 till date. And member representing Senate on the Development Committee of the Governing Council, Uniport, 2021 till date. He was member representing Senate on the Search Team 2021 for the 9th Vice Chancellor of Uniport. Other administrative experience include being Director, Institute of Agricultural Research and Development, Uniport, 2012 to 2014. And Head, Department of Animal Science and Fisheries, Uniport, 2010 to 2012. Also, he is steering committee member of the World Bank funded African Center of Excellence in Oilfield Chemicals Research, Uniport, 2014 till date. His academic honors and awards include receiving AAU, that is Association of African Universities, Senior Executive Attachment Grant for Technology Optic in 2015. German Academic Exchange Service, part funding for training on internal quality assurance of higher education, instituted in Anglophone West Africa from 2014 to 2016. First research grant in 2008, and the prestigious Association of Commonwealth University, titular fellowship to the University of Manitoba, Canada in 2007. He was one of the recipients of the 2015 Uniport Distinguished Merit Award. He is the external examiner for graduate programs and external assessor for professorial assessment to public and private universities in Nigeria. Professor Etela has supervised 8 doctoral, that is 3 completed, 5 ongoing, 3 masters and 23 bachelor's projects. He has published 47 journal articles, 5 book chapters, over 20 conference papers, and has attended and presented invited papers at different national, international, agricultural and agribusiness fora, seminars and workshops. He is member Nigerian Malacological Society for Grassland Research and Development in Nigeria, Agricultural Policy Research Network of Nigeria, Nigerian Institute of Animal Science, Animal Science Association of Nigeria, Nigerian Society for Animal Production, that is, he's a life member, and Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply of United Kingdom. He is a comrade dean. Professor Etela has traveled to several African countries, a few in North America and Europe. His extracurricular activities include public enlightenment workshops on dangers of pipeline vandalism, benefits of social inclusiveness, techniques for academic exploit, peace building, and conflict resolution and management. He is a Christian and grew up as a member of Christ Church in Foku. Other kingdom services in God's vineyard include serving as member of the Hospitality Service Group, Deacons Board Chairman 2013 to 2015, Chairman Church Welfare Committee 2016 to 2017, Secretary Church Board 2017 to 2021, and Chairman Local Government Council 2021 till date, all at the Living Faith Church, that is Winners Chapel, Rumibo District. Professor Etela is married to Mrs. Warigbani Ibisime Etela, and the marriage is blessed with all the published papers and 2 kids. Handrel 8, Jan is 4. His hobbies include listening to music, traveling, writing, football, and swimming. Vice Chancellor, sir, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I present to you an unassuming academic with a tinge of professional and industrial experience, a progressive mind, a teacher, an administrator, a social worker, a deacon, animal scientist, husband and father, Professor Ibisime Etela, to deliver the 174 inaugural lecture of the University of Port Harcourt titled Feed My Flock. This is sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. I would like to crave your indulgence because of the time to just go ahead, because I know I have just a few minutes to go. But permit me to recognize you, the Vice Chancellor, for this, and all the past Vice Chancellors, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Admin, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Development, and past DVCs, members of Governing Council, principal officers of the University, Provost, College of Health Sciences, Deans, School of Graduate Studies, and let me use the word and all protocols observed. The outline for the presentation today is the protocol, dedication, acknowledgement. I'm going to actually skip many of these things. Okay. That one is on. Okay. So while they are working on that, let me just go ahead and seize this opportunity to acknowledge a few persons I've listed there. I want to acknowledge God Almighty for the privilege to have this presented today. I also want to acknowledge the Vice Chancellor. Okay. The Vice Chancellor for approving this date for this presentation. Let me also pay a tribute to late Mrs. Olufumilayo Manua, the founder of the nursery school I actually first attended. She gave me a full scholarship, and from that time on, I've always enjoyed one scholarship or the other, and I give God all the glory. I also want to acknowledge one of my primary school teachers that have actually given so much meaning to what I do, and I think is also here. I want to acknowledge Chief Fobra Thomas Akoko, here seated. He was my primary school teacher, and in those days he said something to me, and I'm sure you'll be surprised to know that those words meant so much. He used to treat me in a way that I thought he hated me. And one day, while I was considering why does he like dealing with me like this, as if he knew, he looked at me and said, "Are you wondering why I do this?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Because you are different." And from that day, everything I do, I have at the back of my mind that I'm different. I also want to recognize Mr. Asiedu is late, my mathematics teacher. In fact, one of the courses I didn't like was mathematics. But somehow in year 3, he found a way to make me have interest in it. And today, if I'm doing anything that doesn't include figure, I'm not interested. So I want to acknowledge him for that. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Mensah, my biology and chemistry teacher in the secondary school. He's also a Ghanaian, both of them. And several others. For my bachelor's degree, my supervisor, then Professor Alexis Monsi, still around, he taught me how to write scientific writing, and I want to acknowledge him for that. My master supervisor, unfortunately, is late. Professor Oji died just last month, and we're still moving for that, so I want to acknowledge him. He taught me how to be thorough. Professor Oji will read every line, know where you missed a dot, know where you missed a crossing. I also want to acknowledge my doctorate dissertation supervisor, Professor UJ Katwa. He was supposed to be here, but he has a defense that he's doing, so he's not here. And my second supervisor for the PhD is here, Professor Bamikole. I want to recognize him from the University of Benin. Thank you, sir. You treated me like a friend, and from then, a friend and a brother. The bond has continued. I also want to pay tribute to another, I call him a destiny helper, because somehow for my PhD, he came to examine me in the University of Benin. But I don't know how fate brought him to Uniport to assess me for my promotion to associate professor. And on that day, we exchanged words, and I said, "Prof, I'll be glad if you come to assess me to interview me for my PhD." And he said he'll be also glad because he has seen me grow from the doctorate to associate. And as God will have it, it turned out that when he came, when it was time for that, he was the one who came. And I want to thank God for that destiny helper, but it's late. He has been buried. I thank God for his soul. May his soul rest in peace. And very importantly, one of my, I call him my professional father, Professor Dr. Asamu Alabi, also a Ghanaian. I don't know, all my parts coming up have been helped by Ghanaians. This is a Ghanaian. He was my supervisor at the International Livestock Research Institute for the Masters and PhD. He had a very big influence on me. I also want to acknowledge, I know I will not have time to do that some other time or very soon. I want to acknowledge, he's a friend, but he doesn't like me to call him, sorry, he's a father, but he doesn't like me to call him a father. But today, let me also let him know, he's one of my fathers in the University of Port Harcourt, Professor O. Akaranta. He's a mentor, he's a friend, he has been very helpful to me. I would also like to acknowledge Emeritus Professor now, Bene Williabe. She was a mother, and Professor Lova Koyin. Others that have had influence, both indirectly and directly, the 5th Vice Chancellor, I see him as a model every time I learn from him. The 6th Vice Chancellor, Professor Don Baridam, and the 7th Vice Chancellor, Professor J.A. Ajenka, is always readily available as a mentor. I never have a dull moment with him. And the 8th Vice Chancellor, who recommended me for employment, and of course approved my promotion. I want to acknowledge all of them. And also Professor Obuna Joel, I call him my Dean and Center Leader of the World Bank Center of Excellence. He's always telling me, inspiring me to move forward. Let me also acknowledge all the professors, academic staff, administrative staff, technical staff in the Faculty of Agriculture. I don't want to be, because if I want to mention that, I have over 100 names. So permit me to do that, to recognize everybody. The Department of Animal Science, the Institute of Agricultural Research, and for all your support and collaboration. I want to appreciate the following: Professor Akaranta, Professor Alice Sinte, Professor Zabe, and Professor Bamikole Uniben, Professor Kala, and Dr. Labi for painstakingly going through this program. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, let me also acknowledge these persons that are listed: the Ariba family, the Tengema Kobri, the Dickens Assembly, the Da Jackson group of houses, and of course, the Ifoko community represented by the respected chiefs. The Royal NS is here, Emmanuel, Bray is here, and other chiefs in the entourage. Please, they are all seated here. So, without further ado, but not to make a mistake, let me just also sincerely appreciate my family, my wife. She is supposed to be here, but she went to get the children in school. Mrs. Waribani Ibisme Etela for all the prayers and support, and my 2 children for making me their hero. The inaugural lecture. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I would like to commence this lecture with a simple question. Do we still need livestock, since they are accused of contributing to greenhouse gas emission and global warming, as well as climate change? I won't be asking for the answer now, but I want you, as I go on throughout the lecture, I want everyone to begin to consider that. But while you're thinking about the answer to that question, this is a summary of what the global goals stand for, the Sustainable Development Goals. They say, from ending poverty and hunger to responding to climate change and sustaining our natural environment and the natural resources, food and agriculture lies at the heart of the 2030 agenda. So far, the globe is working from now till the year 2030. They are working on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So at the center of that, for us to succeed, they are saying food and agriculture lies at the center. These are the Sustainable Development Goals. They are brought up because sometimes when a few persons are asked, they mention the Millennium Development Goal. It's just for us to know that we are the era of the Sustainable Development Goal. But this title, Feed the Flock, is directly connected to SDG 2, Zero Hunger, and SDG 13, Climate Action. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, the inspiration for this title today came when I had the privilege in 2006 to attend a 2-week program in the church. I wanted to seek a direction for my life. Even though I have been employed in the University of Port Harcourt, I wanted to find out, what does God want me to do in this system? And so I went for this. But on the last day of that program, which is on the 23rd of April, 2006, I asked God to say something to me as far as that program is concerned. And this was the scripture that came. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, at that time, I never knew what this should mean. But it ended with the word, feed my lambs. And I said, okay, maybe because I'm a ruminant nutrition, God is telling me to continue doing what I'm doing. But as I kept thinking about what to do when I had the chance for getting a title for this, that same message kept coming. Hence, the title we have today. But simply put, what are ruminants? I will not bore you with so many things, but each time you see a cattle moving, each time you see a sheep on the road, each time you see a goat on the road, you are already looking at what? A ruminant. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, in the book of Genesis, chapter 30, verse 32, the Bible speaking mentioned these 3 animals just to show how important they are in the life of humans. And it says, I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from tents all the speckled and spotted cattle. I highlighted it. And all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, and it's saying that, and shall be my hire. Hire simply means when you do, you get a reward from it. Right from then, the scripture recognizes that these 3 animals are always there for the benefit of humanity. So, they work for humanity. In Ezekiel, chapter 34 and verse 3, now the courage for me to decide on this topic, feed my flock. I should have said feed the flock, but I want everybody to read it and personalize it. Ye eat the fat, and ye clothe you with the wool. I'm sure everybody in this hall is wearing something that has wool. It's not cotton. I didn't say cotton. Wool is from animal. And everybody has eaten meat somewhere before coming here. Ye kill them and are fed. Ye kill them that are fed. So somebody feeds them and you eat. Ye feed not the flock. That is where the message is coming from. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, as independent as they might appear, ruminants, simply defined here as cattle, sheep, and goats, because the definition is broader than this. need attention to be paid to their welfare and feeding. Professor O.J. Babayemi, presenting his inaugural, said something. He said, if we're in the minds of the ruminants in Nigeria, we will know that every single one of them is looking for a way to leave Nigeria to somewhere else. They said so. I think I was trained to listen to them. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, everyone seated here appreciates eating good meat. Everyone enjoys to wear nice leather shoes and belts. Everyone enjoys to sit on well-made leather chairs at home, in the office, and in your cars. But only few are concerned with the source of this product. And today, one of the things I want to achieve is to let us know, every time you see the ruminants, you should know that belt on your waist, the shoe you're wearing, the seat you're sitting on came from them. Hence, the title of this 174th inaugural lecture is Feed My Flock. It's a command. It's a command, no option. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in preparing this lecture, I was cognizant of the fact that I'm not just doing it as an inaugural lecturer. I understand that I'm the 6th Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture. I also know that I'm presenting a lecture from the Faculty of Agriculture. I'm also aware that I'm presenting the first inaugural lecture from the Department of Animal Science. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, if not for these conditions, my job would have been very easy. In 10 pages, I should be done. But because of this understanding, I had to speak a little so that the Faculty of Agriculture will feel my talking, the Department of Animal Science will feel my talking, and the ruminant nutritionists will feel my talking. So what is animal science? What does it take to become an animal scientist? In some texts, maybe when journalists write, you will see animal science written, you will see animal husbandry written, you will see animal agriculture. Don't be confused. They are all the same. At least for the purpose of this lecture and forever, they are the same. But what is this animal science all about? It's applying science to solve problems. And it applies knowledge and principles behind the biological science, behavioral science, physical science, social science, and or agricultural engineering. The purpose for animal science is to rear farm animals through scientific understanding to produce quality animal source protein for food, raw material, drought to support crop production, and companion for those of us who have dogs, who have cats at home. It is part of it. And of course, for employment and maintaining ecosystem integrity. This is the purpose for raising the animals. Anything contrary to this, it means something has gone wrong somewhere. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I'm also constrained to talk about animal science as a profession because in my citation, it was clear that I'm a member of the 5th Governing Council of the Nigerian Institute of Animal Science, which is the institute that gave the legal burden to animal science as a profession. So animal scientists are trained to implement projects using systems approach. Systems approach in the sense that whatever you do from your end, you should consider the impact of what you're doing at the other end. The Almighty God in Scripture, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, permit me to go there because that is my source. preferred animal scientist. And I don't want anybody to be envious about that. Because if you know the story about Abel, if you know the story about Abraham, which is the source of our Vice Chancellor's name, if you know the story about Isaac, if you know the story about Jacob, and the story about David, you will know that God loves the animal scientist. Without letting us feel other this, I want us to know that it's not only peculiar in Nigeria. The profession in the United States of America, which we all know, the equivalent of the Nigerian Institute of Animal Science in the US is the American Registry of Professional Animal Scientists. They have it in the US. And of course, theirs was established in 1984. The one in Nigeria was established first in 1990 as animal science, and then got legal backing in 2007. The disciplines are listed there. I won't bore you with that since it's in the booklet. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, since the title went out, I've received several good calls. In fact, some asking me, do you want to preach? What do you want to talk about? Some say, I'm also a flock, so I want to be fed. In all, I told them, simply come. If the Holy Spirit allows me to preach that day, you receive the preaching. When my time is up, I bow out. But just to help us, let me try to define feed. What I mean by feed here. These are materials offered as food to animals. They are forages, grass plants, crop byproducts, crop residues, crop byproducts, or their mixtures, as the farmer has. And what is flock? A group of cattle is called a herd of cattle. But for this lecture, I've decided to group them because if you are talking of sheep, you are talking of flock. So I decided to group them as flock. So it's simply used here as a group of what? Livestock. And the mine is you to take care of them. FAO 2021, why is this important? This is a very recent report, said 760 million people in the world faced hunger in 2020. I don't know what will happen in 2021. But out of this, 412 million live in Asia, 282 live in Africa, and 60 in Latin America and the Caribbean. Something has to be done to reverse this trend. But whatever the definition of feed the flock is by anybody in the hall, what we are still saying is that we all desire to provide adequate nutrition for the livestock that will result to the humans that eat it, because what you eat is what you are. So why are we concerned about ruminants? And of course, the reason why they are looked at as things that could be ignored, because they are living factories. I call them living factories. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, globally, there are over 155 species of ruminants. I'm only talking about 3 here. And they can utilize fibrous feed. That is why they are special. Why are they able to utilize fibrous feed? Because they have both microbial digestion. The microbes in their rumen help them to digest the fiber, and then they also have the ability to do enzymatic digestion, which is what humans do. As humans, we are only concerned, or we are only able to digest our food with the help of enzymes. But these creatures are able to do so with the help of microorganisms and the enzymes. Some important features are listed there. I will leave it and move on. Why do we call them factories? If you look at this table, from newborn to pre-ruminants. That is when they have, before they start eating grasses, you see the rumen capacity is small, but as soon as they start eating grasses, the percentage increases while the omasum and the true stomach reduces. And this is the special feature of the ruminant. It is this feature that makes them to produce the milk and other things that we enjoy taking. What is the role of livestock? Livestock play a role in the diet of humans. If you look at this table, you will see in the world, the average per person intake of protein, 77 grams per day. The contribution from animal protein is 11%, global average. In the developed world, you see 103, 12, but that is Nigeria. In Sub-Saharan Africa, that is the average, that is it. So this is the role they play. And what do they play? There are some nutrients, essential nutrients that are missing, amino acids that are missing in the diets of those who rely on crops or grains alone. And these things can only be complemented or provided when you give them protein from livestock. All right. For livestock and the environment, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, when livestock is accused of causing problem in the environment, it is because we mismanage them. If you check, if we look at the map, you look at the density. The places where you have high density of livestock per unit area are also the areas that correspond to where you have the climax of conflicts. But I will not bore us with that much. I'll just go on. But what this causes is that it causes environmental degradation and other things. This table shows us the different ruminant production systems in Nigeria. You have the grazing system, which is what we all know, and the challenges that come with it. You have the semi-intensive system that has the grazing and supplementation, and of course, the intensive system. These are the feed materials that are available: grasses, forages, forage legumes, grass plants, crop residues. When you harvest your crops, what comes out of it? Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, the next section that I'll be going into will only mostly focus on crop residues, because that is the area that I've done the bulk of my work. The reason is that when you have conflicts with increasing human population, decreasing land mass, then the tendency is that you need more food, more crops to feed humans. But the crop residues that result from those crops are useful feed materials for these animals. And so several works were done to see how this can be put together. These are some of the challenges you see under poor production system: poor animal welfare, inadequate animal nutrition, and so on. I'll leave that. What we are looking at here is, on this chart, is a pathway for successfully integrating crop and livestock system. On the left, you will see the crop system on its own, the grazing system on its own. What that brings, we all know in the country, because everybody is scrambling for the little area for the animals to be fed. The other is looking for area for the crops to be planted. But if you go to the point of mixed systems, that is, you combine this and this together, what you have is that rather than fight over the resources, you complement each other. The crop residue from the crop farm is a feed material for the animals, and then the manure from the animal is an organic fertilizer for your crop, and vice versa. So if we move to this point, we have a system which is defined as the crop livestock integrated system that can guarantee peace. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, this table is showing the government policy and some of the prejudice that the livestock section experiences. If you look at this chart, for example, you will only see poultry and cattle mentioned there. Just poultry and cattle. The other protein source is fish. Yet, we have the sheep, we have the goats, and what is the effect of such policies? When the livestock value chain is poorly developed, you get to a point where everybody scrambles over the few things that are there, while there are opportunities elsewhere to lash on. As a matter of fact, the quantity of food one cattle takes a day is what 10 sheep goats will take for a day. I'm not sure if you add the values to those things, you will lose so much. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, looking at this problem and knowing what it is, in 2011, I conducted a study with one of my project students, and it's here, I think it's a staff with us now. But that study showed that 37.5% of crop farmers simply crop monocropping. And there are advantages and disadvantages because the environment will suffer in the end. 62.5% of the crop farmers practice mixed cropping, where you can have cereal crops with leguminous crop, at least to help themselves. And some others, 57.1 farmers utilize crop residue as feed. In other words, there's a lot of wastages of these materials that could be used for feeding the animals that are not being used. And so we are saying that integrated crop livestock farming will give a better profit margin because you sell from your crop and you sell from your livestock. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, this chart is showing the connection between the two that can be used for the benefit of man. These are some of the value chains we have. This is a study in the United States of America. There was a study conducted globally and reported in 2019. And the study shows that agriculture as a whole contributes 10% of the greenhouse gas emission. And yet, everywhere, when we talk, it is said that livestock. So if the whole of 10%, just 10% from agri, the rest 90 is coming from different sources. Nobody talks about them. And so the challenge of solving this thing with the pretense of controlling livestock production ends up not yielding anything if 90% is still busy emitting the greenhouse gas. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, there is poor support for animal research and development in the country. And thank God for a publication by the Executive Secretary for TED Fund, Professor Buguru, who has is moving to institutionalize research, especially agricultural research and development, to give priority to all the value chains and species areas. But this was a study we conducted in 2009. And the study was to screen between orange flesh sweet potato and the white flesh. The orange flesh sweet potato we are referring to, if you cut it, you will think that it's carrot. That is how it is, because it has been bred to have high quantity of beta carotene that is good for a provitamin for vitamin A and good for the eyes. So the results is what is shown here. We looked at about 13 varieties and also their forage, which is what I'll be projecting in the next few slides. For research and development, my contribution to knowledge, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I had the privilege of working with 3 crop species. The cowpea, which is the common beans we eat, groundnut, which is what we love eating, and sweet potato, which we like to buy each time we are driving along the East-West Road. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I worked on 4 cowpea varieties, and the results from those were to complement earlier studies on social acceptance of those crops and the agronomic parameters. We worked on the nutritional component. I'm glad to announce that on NAGRAM, that is the center that is in charge of releasing new varieties of crop into Nigeria, 2 of those crops, which are the ones listed there, 994 and 394, are actually in the market and farmers are using it. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when next you enter the market to buy that brown beans, you may just be buying one of these varieties. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, during the course of my growing up as a researcher, we also had the privilege of comparing 18 varieties of sweet potato. And the sweet potato varieties were done in collaboration with the National Root Crop Research Institute. And we did that study in the humid forest. This is around this side, and the drier part, the Sudan, Guinea savanna. And the study showed that the tuber yields in the Guinea savanna were higher than the tuber yields in the humid forest. And the range is what is shown there for the 18 varieties. This paper was published in 2007. But what is important there is that if you look at the chart, you'll realize that in the humid forest, this way, the further yield from each of those varieties were higher down this way, which means it is a better source for forage down this way compared to what you have there. And these varieties, we also conducted another study with 2 breeds of cattle, call them the Bunaji, which is the common white Fulani, the one we see all over, and another one in Dama, which is a smaller and more sturdy one, brown. We looked at it and compared their milk yields and milk composition, which is the average, the mean I just showed on the table there. You will see that the Bunaji, which is the white Fulani, the total solids, that is what contains the nutrients that is available, is higher in that compared to the Indama. And of course, the average yield is also higher. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, technology adoption. From the 18 studies which I used initially, working with the team from the different centers, from the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, the International Livestock Research Institute, we were able to select those ones and came up with 3 that we further tested for calf growth, the growth of the young one that feed on it, both as supplements or as sole diet. And the results were released. And as I speak, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, 3 of those varieties have been released and are being used by farmers, as are shown on the board there. TIS 87, they are being used by farmers in Nigeria. So when next you are driving along the East-West Road and you decide to stop at Indiama or wherever to buy sweet potato, you may just be buying one of those varieties. They are pink color skin. The other one is brown color skin. But these are the varieties that have been released and they are very good. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, we also did some studies on cassava leaves and peels. And this is just the average that is being shown there, the crude protein content and so on. This was published recently in our conference in 2021. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, ladies and gentlemen, In the course of my studies and working, I also realized that it's not just the science. There's also need to understand the business aspect of things. And so we did a study, Etela and Onoja, and came up with this. What this chart is showing is that in Africa, for example, the agribusiness incubators in Africa, as at the time the study was conducted in 2017, we had only 6. And these agribusiness incubator centers are with the places where you can attract youths to get to exhibit their skills, applying ICT, applying their managerial skills, and also learning the entrepreneurial skills. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, this study, as at that time, shows that Nigeria has, on average, the youngest population, I mean, youth population compared to these other countries, yet we didn't have. But thank God, through the intervention of the Association of Deans of Agriculture in Nigeria, we already have 9, and we are still expecting more. And I want to say at this time that the University of Port Harcourt should be interested in having an agribusiness center. This is a picture in order to get this thing and to understand better how these things work. I applied with one of my colleagues in the picture there, Mr. Dumpe, I think it's in this hall. Mr. Dumpe, yeah. We applied for the Association of Commonwealth, Association of African Universities grant for a 10-day study executive attachment to this center, an agribusiness center in Uganda. It's amazing, sir. The youth and everything. What we were in the factory there, they just got a new facility for processing coffee. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, ladies and gentlemen, it was the success at the first World Bank Center of Excellence campaign by the University of Port Harcourt. At that time, because in the Faculty of Agriculture, we have a well-structured series program that allows our students to go to the industry for the 12 months and return. The experience from that inspired us to write a proposal, which we titled the Center for Food, Agripreneurship, and Sustainable Livelihood. This was in 2014. The University of Port Harcourt almost secured 2 World Bank Centers of Excellence as at that time. But we were denied the one for this Center for Food, Agripreneurship, and Sustainable Livelihood, simply for the reason that the Faculty of Agriculture had not commenced graduate programs at that time. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I can say with, as a privileged position as a dean, every department in the Faculty of Agriculture now has master's program. Not just masters, they also have a doctorate program, which means at this time, there is no limitation for us getting a center and running it. And I also want to thank management for looking positively in the direction of splitting the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension to the Department of Agricultural Economics and Agribusiness Management and the Department of Agricultural Extension and Development Study. The motivation for doing that is for us to position ourselves to be able to accommodate this specialized center, which we refer to as Agribusiness Incubator Center. Thus, establishing Agribusiness Incubator Center in Uniport now shall be the best decision at the right time. In conclusion, several feed resources like forage legumes and grasses, brass plants, crop residues, agro-industrial byproducts are available to livestock farmers. The studies reported have shown the possibility of using crop residues from improved food and feed crops like cowpea, groundnut, and sweet potato fodder as dry season feed resources. As a matter of fact, you can actually plant, if you have a compound that has some space, you can throw your sweet potato there and it will come up. Even the leaves, some humans eat them. But I know we are not eating them in Nigeria for now. Unlike other crop residues that will require biological, chemical, and even physical treatment before they can be used, these crops I've mentioned to you can be used, the crop residue can be used directly without any form of treatment. And that is an advantage, both to the environmental integrity and also to the cost of the farmer. As dual-purpose crops, they serve as income sources from the primary product, which is the grains and the tuber roots, and from the sale of crop residues in the places where the crop residues feed market exists. There is a thriving feed market globally. It's about $74.8 billion annually. And the biggest of the markets for feed crop residue is in Europe. That is where the market is well developed. And I know that in Nigeria, we have it, but it's not yet well developed, which is part of the value chains that can be developed. And this kind of agribusiness incubator center can help us to tap into that. A gradual shift to smart livestock feeding or nutrition can help make animal agriculture attractive to the youth and can be achieved using functional agribusiness incubator centers. Let me add at this point, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, in order to move towards this place, I and my team from the Faculty of Agriculture have initiated a collaboration with the Center for Information Technology and Engineering with Dr. Omije to try to build something in the area of smart agriculture. Globally, people are tending towards that way, and we cannot afford to stay while everybody moves on. Please permit me to add, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, hazards associated with handling livestock range from the possibility of them kicking you to you contracting zoonotic diseases. These are risks that are there in livestock. Unfortunately, those who work with these animals, especially as I know in the University of Port Harcourt, they are not usually entitled to hazard allowance. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, permit me to use this medium and platform to plead that they should be considered for responsibility in hazard allowance. Thus, the animal workers deserve hazard allowance and should be so favorably considered. Further researchable areas, I won't be talking on those ones, but the recommendations I'm making, Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, is very simple. I won't give a very long one. I'll just mention two. Although in the program, 5 of them were listed, but I'll just say the University of Port Harcourt should think of promoting workable models for public-private partnership to increase investment in animal agriculture at the Faculty of Agriculture. As I speak, sir, I've had people come to say they were willing to invest in the faculty, but because the university doesn't seem to have a structured way to account for that, that is not being done. I want to recommend that the university considers that. And very importantly, I like to recommend that the university, in line with integrating the technology park, the University of Port Harcourt considers establishing the agribusiness incubator center in the University of Port Harcourt so that we can take advantage of the trend. Thank you, sir.
Please put your hands together for the erudite scholar. We will now officially hand over the inaugural lecture to the Vice Chancellor of the University of Port Harcourt. Cameraman, please capture this wonderful moment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Etela, for this wonderful presentation.
Professor Etela, thank you so much for wonderfully delivered lecture. I think we'll be more kind to our flock now as we see them on the roads walking. Before we eat them, we remember them. Thank you, sir. I most respectfully, at this point in time, call upon our amiable, unique 9th Vice Chancellor, Professor Wonari Abraham Georgeville, to come and give his closing remarks.
Let me stand on existing protocols, but let me welcome the family of our inaugural lecturer. Mommy and kids, you're welcome. Okay. Professor Etela is not chairman, local government council, but is chairman, local church council, 2021 till date. Thank you. All is well that ends well. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is yet another memorable day in the annals of the history of the University of Port Harcourt. Today, our 174th inaugural lecturer, Professor Etela, has indeed creditably performed to justify his elevation to the prestigious rank of Professor of Ruminant Nutrition and Production in the University of Port Harcourt. As Vice Chancellor of this university, I am indeed very elated and satisfied with the performance of this our erudite scholar. And I do hope that you too are satisfied. In this 63-page document, our inaugural lecturer took us through what appears to be the origin of animal science in its crude form as a profession up to the present day, highly professionalized specialty of animal science. He told us that as far back as the period of Abraham in the Bible, the profession of animal science began with biblical personages such as Abel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David, who later became king of Israel. He proceeded that all of them were indeed practitioners of the profession of animal science. He also told us that production of quality animal source protein as food or as source of raw materials for the production of nice leather belts, shoes, well-made leather chairs at home, office, and cars are all as a result of the application of a scientific understanding of animal science profession in solving human challenges and meeting the needs of humans. The copious quotation from the Holy Book of the Christians, the Bible, and the title of this inaugural lecture has undoubtedly placed the profession of animal science as divinely ordained to solve man's need, for one of the most basic needs of human existence, food. It is intriguing to note that our erudite scholar, a livestock advocate, agrees with his colleague, Professor O.J. Babayemi, that indeed, if cattle, sheep, and goats are allowed to earn their way. They will, like human beings who are migrating to greener pastures abroad, they will also migrate out of Nigeria to better places where their welfare shall be assured. Professor Etela is of the opinion that grazing is good, but overgrazing as a result of high density of ruminants in an area may result into vegetation loss, nutrient imbalance, and environmental degradation. He was, however, quick to say that man is the main culprit on the issues of environmental degradation based on livestock. He provided scientific basis for a viable ruminant production system in Nigeria and the advantages of such a system in providing food security and raw materials for the leather industry. He also called for a government policy for livestock development to aid in economically viable, which is profit-driven, economically friendly, and socially inclusive livestock development in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, are there challenges facing animal science agriculture in Nigeria? Yes, Professor Etela provides further illumination on these challenges as resource poor farmers, that is poor funding, resulting in inadequate feeding of livestock, thus contravening the injunction, feed my flock. We are not feeding the flock properly here. Others, he said, include ignorance, lack of knowledge of animal science among practitioners of animal science at a low level. He said attitude, inability of people to change their indigenous beliefs. He also talked about gender issues that appears to forbid women from doing livestock farming. He also talked about environmental issues that affects the availability of the right food for the livestock. He listed opportunities that are yet untapped in animal science to develop livestock value chain. He reiterated the need for government and institutions to support animal research and development. In looking at Abel's offering of his flock and the fat therefore, and how it pleased God, it is possible that advances in animal science can produce God-pleasing results. In concluding this highly stimulating lecture, he advocated for 1, the establishment of Agribusiness Incubation Center in Africa. 2, establishment of University of Port Harcourt Agribusiness Incubation Center to attract our youth to agriculture. And then 3, the establishment of Center for Food, Agripreneurship, and Sustainable Livelihood. He has also said we are ripe now for it. We shall pursue it to its logical conclusion. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, animal science, we are liking it now, we are clapping, but it has its own share of soil side for practitioners. They can contract zoonotic disease, he has told us. They are exposed to laboratory risks, and you can even be attacked by the animal. So while you are clapping and all of us want to go to agribusiness, know that there are hazards. Therefore, hazard allowance in the University of Port Harcourt, I know that the erudite professor will soon document the hazards and then present to us as soon as possible. Let us please rise. And once again, let's rise and once again applaud this animal advocate, Professor Etela, Dean, Faculty of Agriculture. Thank you. God bless us all. Rainbows.
Thank you very much. You may have your seat, please. I was waiting for the boss to sit before I will have the permission to ask you to do that. Thank you. Sorry for keeping you. Thank you very much for finding time to be here today to listen to Professor Etela delivering the 174th inaugural lecture. Thank you so much for finding time to be here, and to all our chiefs that found their way all the way from the other parts of the world. Thank you, thank you. Now the next inaugural lecture, 175th series, titled Myths and Misconceptions About Entrepreneurship, Putting the Record Straight, will be delivered by Professor Clifford O. Ofurun, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration. Please, sir, stand. I want them to clap more for you. Please keep standing, sir. Thank you, sir. From the Department of Accounting, Faculty of Management Sciences, and the date for the lecture is Thursday, 7th October, 2021. The time is 3 p.m. and the venue is here, Ebitimi Banigo Auditorium, University of Port Harcourt. Please put your hands together for him. So you are invited. Please make sure you come around to support and to cheer him up. Thank you. Now, University of Port Harcourt did something very spectacular for Professor Etela, his family, and his very special guests, like the chiefs here in front of us. The university prepared a very special, sumptuous cocktail in honor of Professor and his family. So after now, we shall go to the usual place. All the professors here, you are specially invited. And for those of you over there, something wonderful has been prepared. At the entrance to this auditorium, you'll meet people that will share and give you food. So please don't be in a hurry to go. Thank you very much. May we now rise on our feet as we take the University Anthem. Immediately after the University Anthem, please remain wherever you are while the procession will now retire. It is after the Vice Chancellor and the professors have marched out, then others will now follow. Please, that is the order. Thank you. Anthem. It's on the screen. Don't be in a hurry. Make sure you have something to eat. We have enough for everyone. Somebody collect it.